SBO Community Call. Today's March 3rd, 2022. And we're going to start going through agenda items. Let me share my screen. Let me know when you see the agenda screen.
Yep, we do.
All right. There's an announcement. SBO has been released. I sent an email, so you all should be able to see it. If not, let me know to forward the announcement. Uh, there's quite a bit of bug fixes that we did to improve quality on SBO GA. So, and we're planning to do releases now on a cadence based on the last discussions we have. And then the schedule is still to be put out. So we'll share the schedule once we have it. But it's gonna be on a quarterly basis. It's not gonna be at the moment. We think that's the cadence we're gonna go with. That could change in the future. Um,
Maybe can you open that link just to see?
sure, sure. So this is the release and the changes. This is the bugs that were fixed. These are all the commits. Main
This is auto
contributors.
generated, right, Andy? Is this auto generated or handwritten? This
What-
all text.
What do you mean?
This
I mean,
what
this
changed.
this text, is it auto generated somehow?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Makes sense.
Most or I took a couple things out and moved it to fix bugs. Off of advice from Pebble.
Okay, like auto generated, then some post, some editing. Okay, good.
Yeah. Because by default it just gives you that
Oh,
list
I
of new
like that.
contributors
I
and
like
then
that
just
new
lists of PRs
contributors
that got merged.
section.
You look the contributors, yeah. New contributors is good.
I like
Yeah.
that section. So this you added, right? That's good.
No, GitHub gave you new contributors.
Okay. Okay.
I added the installing section. Largely came from previous releases. Looks like it hasn't really changed all that much.
Yeah, it's probably comparing these two guys.
Okay, cool. Okay, good. Thanks to new contributors, Thomas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So there's a discussion item from Baju. You wanna take over,
Yeah.
Baju?
Yeah, I'll share my screen and
Yep. I'm gonna stop sharing.
if anybody else has any other item, please add. This might need few minutes to go through. So, yeah, I added just created today, but it came up while reviewing another PR. There was some PR from Scott while going through that. During the discussion, I realized that something like this would be helpful. Okay, the reasoning behind why we need an extension to copy provision service from one namespace to another is there might be some certain scenarios your actual the provision service is fixed in some certain namespace, right? And whereas your application is sitting in another namespace, and there was some requirement like that earlier in SBO. So, and we have a feature to specify namespace in SBO old, I mean, our current API, that is GA, whereas that feature is missing in the spec API. So there was some discussion to introduce this support for specifying namespace, but that was rejected for mainly for security concerns. The reason security concerns, like it is going to make the security RBAC rules everything very complex. As soon as you introduce one more namespace. Actually, your service is in different namespace from your application. So you need to have a complex rules. So maybe that was a primary reason that is discouraged from the. So you can see in this spec currently in two places. In the provision service section, it is written like this: the secret must be in the same namespace as the resource. Okay, that is where the actual service is. Okay, and also later in the second paragraph of the service binding section, you can see another recommend. This is actually a recommendation. Restrict, sorry, restricting service binding resource within the same namespace is strongly recommended. And there are some more changes coming up from Spots PR, which is still under review. So, and also I know, so that means my justification for why this kind of extension, or I don't know, maybe we can make it as part of the core spec itself, if not an extension. But at least for now, I'm thinking to introduce it as an extension. If really people think that this can go into core, yeah, that would be also fine. Anyway, so the reason, so two reasons. One is this is a feature that we already have it in SBO in the other API, but not in the spec API. Okay. Second reason, I also noticed that there was some requirement. I think some other people asking in our channel, for cross namespace stuff. So we told that it is supported in our current API, but also mentioned that it is not there in the new spec API. Okay, so this option of creating copying. So my idea is that instead of introducing this as a part of the core feature, have an extension, or that means through yet another service. So I understand that this could lead. I don't know that it's going to lead to some kind of proliferation of CRDs and CRs. At
Yeah,
least, yeah.
don't
Anyway,
like that very much. But
yeah. Anyway, so. Yeah, we'll come back to that when discussion. So for now, see, this is my suggestion. So we introduce a new CRD, I mean custom resource. We can call, I am maybe provision service copier. I'm named it as Singer felt.
Mhm.
Okay, and where we are going to have a this, of course, this resource is going to become like a provision serviceable resource. Okay, and that means there is a status uh, section with the binding name, which is going to be the final binding, that is where it is a destination for the copy, right? The secret
Okay.
is going to be copied in the current namespace or whatever explicitly mentioned here. And in that namespace, this name. So that means this itself is going to become a provision service. Okay. Yeah. So now from where we need to copy that information is going to be part of the spec, where we just like a typical provision service, we can ask for API version, kind, name, and then in addition to that, we also ask for the namespace. I have given an example here. So let's say there is a post. This is I use the Crunchy data PostgreSQL, but it is not really a provision service. But yeah, just for the sake of example. So let's say there is a Crunchy the data post API version and that kind and the name hippo, and let's say that is sitting in another namespace prod Postgres, but we want this application running in our default namespace. So using this provision service single resource, there will be a controller acting upon that with all the RBAC rules, everything defined. You are going to get a provision service in your current namespace, and you can bind that into your application. So yeah, that's a proposal, or
so right
thoughts.
now, spec doesn't allow cross namespace access, right? It
Yes.
doesn't
Yeah.
explicitly
Yeah.
allow
Yeah.
for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then this copy is just a way to work around that. Is all you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I think we should seek going with cross namespace, access. I mean, if it's already there, usually cross namespace is because two teams collaborate. I'm thinking from a point of view of a user, right? And then a specific namespace is specific for a project, right? And a project that is self-contained, everyone is supposed to collaborate there. But the situations where two teams collaborate and then they share things, so I think that should be allowed in general, as long as you have the right access and the right RBAC. But it's up to the administrator to make that connection, right? So I'm gonna
Yeah.
allow
Yeah.
people from here to talk to objects over there, right?
Yeah. Okay, just one more thing. Spec actually, if somebody really want to do it through some mechanism, spec actually not prohibiting that, but as you can see, the wording is
Okay,
strongly
recommended.
yeah,
Yeah.
that means it's a recommendation still. Okay.
Yeah. So I think we should try to remove that wording because that's gonna move people away from implementing, right? So that wording means you're a bad citizen. You're still a citizen, but you're a bad citizen. You know,
Yeah,
no one,
and the
no one
reasoning,
wants, no one wants to be a bad citizen.
yeah, like I said, the complexity of this security concerns with the RBAC, everything is the main reason why it is not there in the spec right now. I
Right.
mean, these recommendations and
But
all.
if an admin, it's not
Uh,
up to you. If an admin wants
yeah,
to
and
open that, yeah,
to keep the actual, the reconcile loop, everything simple. I mean, the actual operator to be simple. As soon as you introduce this kind of things, it's going to become a bit more complex. So that complexity will
right.
be, and there is a possibility like this proposal. This could be one way to copy, or you can alternatively. I notice there is an IBM operator to copy secrets across namespace. So that
Yeah,
can be used as a solution,
right.
and that it's and that is then you'll get a service which is also can use you through direct secret reference, right? So we don't really need this higher level abstraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. I would like something like that. It's like, oh, sure, you want my provision service. I mean, you're not gonna get the whole provision service because I have it deployed here. If you want it, you can deploy
Yeah.
yourself. But if you don't want to duplicate that, here, get my secret, right? And
Yeah.
then they can just provision the secret whatever they want. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot the
So
link. There was some operator secret
that's
sync
it. That's an interesting one.
operator
Yes.
something where. Yeah. See, this is from IBM Cloud.
Right.
They have an operator like this. I noticed.
So sorry to
So
intrude. Kate
no,
raised her
this one
hand.
there. Okay.
Kate, did you
Yeah,
have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I just had a couple of questions, I guess. So one of them being, is the intention here that the copy happens at the beginning, but also then whenever that secret's updated, it continues to be copied across?
Yeah,
Beju's nodding, so-
that was my intention, but that means we need to have some watching or that whatever that
Controller.
actual yeah.
You need
Yeah.
a controller.
I guess
Right.
my other thought was more on a scope perspective. So from my memory, it was a while ago, because I think I raised this as a requirement a while ago in the spec, and the discussion that was had there was that actually one of the things they wanted to do was keep the scope of the binding specification very specific. And the thought was that copying secrets from one place to another wasn't really a service binding specific problem. It was a more generic problem of how do I get a secret that's
How do I get a
okay
secret
to be
across?
accessible.
Mhm.
So that might be something to bear in mind in terms of, I definitely think we should, as Red Hat, provide a solution for customers so that they can run their service in one place and it can still be accessible elsewhere. But I think we just need to be careful about, is there a way we could do this that's more generic, that means it could be reused in other scenarios or things like that? Should it be done in a way that's not specific to service binding, but also
Right.
does integrate well with service binding?
Right.
So
And I
it's
think
just-
I think that's a good point. Very good point. The other thing is like externalizing services to other namespace does not necessarily mean copying the secret directly, right? Because the access that you have within a namespace might not be necessarily the same as the one that you have in another namespace. For example, locally in the namespace, you can use the local network, right? That Kubernetes gives you. If you're in a separate namespace and you don't want to share that network, you can still expose it as a public entry point, right? So the secret itself won't be the same. So there's no point of copying that. So and that applies to if the service is in another Kubernetes too. So I think we need to find a solution that applies to both scenarios where I'm in a namespace and I want to share my service. I'm in a separate Kubernetes and I want to share my service, or I have an account in Azure, I want to share my service over there, right? So
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Yeah, how do we make it so that you can bind to things that are in different places? And yeah,
Right.
how does that work? But yeah, it was just yeah, I think that was the reason why they didn't have it in the original spec, was more around, obviously around the security perspective, but also around scope creep within the spec itself.
yep, that's a good point.
Right.
But you understand the same, right? So
Yeah.
that's,
Right.
that was
Yeah,
the
I
main point.
also agree
Yeah.
with that, Katie. Yeah, that those are the points why it is not the spec. I also like that it is not there in the spec. Okay, and we could, like she said, we could solve this in various ways. Like using that a generic secret copying syncing would be one option, or maybe we can even create a ad hoc solutions, or I don't know, to using annotations. Let's say instead of putting this into the actual spec, uh, introducing a special annotation to specify the namespace, and
Right.
then your operator taking it. That would be, yeah. So like that, we could come up with some ideas. But why I'm pointing out this one is that, see, this is a feature. Specific namespace is a feature that we support in the current API. So now, once we adopt, or encourage to people to use spec API, once it becomes GA, and yeah, so then we need a solution for our existing users to yeah, use.
Yeah, we could do that in SBO.
Yeah.
The spec, I think, could stay scope to the way it is. And we just, I mean, I think I also have some questions for them, and they're gonna probably come up with the same thing. That's not a problem we want to solve. In first in spec 1.0, and second could be that's not a problem we want to solve at all because it's not in scope, right? So cool. All right.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you very
Yeah, I'm
much,
done.
Baju.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
back to me, I guess, right? So I have a couple other things that I wanna get your thoughts on. So right now in the spec itself, there's a provision service one-to-one relationship to the endpoint, the secret, right? Am I understanding that clear? Do I read that clear? So you have a provision service, and then you have a secret, which is in the status section of the provision service, and that's how we do the binding to workloads through a secret, right? I don't think a service is going to have a single entry point. A service may have multiple entry points. For example, multiple protocols that it supports to get data from it or interact with it. It could also be secure and unsecure channels. An unsecure being more read-only type of thing, maybe. It could be private versus public networking. Against one is more protected than the other. It could be simply multiple users with multiple roles, right? And then the credentials will be different. So I think I like to bring that up in the spec meetings, but I like to get your thoughts on it. Anyone in this call?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned to you already. So this spec right now has strong, you know, they want to go in such a way that it's going to become like a the SBO service binding resource and provision service relationship always one to one. So earlier there was a lot of discussion happened to go for a one to many, but all ended up with a lot of after so many discussions we dropped all those ideas because it brings a lot of other complexities. That was the main reason, and so
Do you remember the workaround? What was the workaround for this situation? I mean, that
yeah.
doesn't remove the use cases.
Right. So one of the suggestion was that to use different, uh,
Provision
secret
service.
seats provision services. But in that case, you okay. Maybe another thing is that within the secret itself, see you can have. I remember one project that what was it, that community MongoDB operator. They keep multiple and URLs. One with the standard with the SSL, without another plain HTTP, And then also they keep and apart from URL, they also keep another entry with the username, password, all these things in a separate entries. So in the same secret, they
Yeah.
have different forms of the data, and these all things are going to be projected into the application. Now it is the choice of the application to decide which one to use. So it's not becoming a problem
Yeah,
of the
that kind
operator.
of defeat the purpose on credentials, for example, because I don't want people to have the same access to the same credentials. So if I want a group of people to have read-only access, I want to allow that access to that secret only to the accounts or service accounts that have the need to know for read-only. But if I do read-write, I don't want the read-only guys to know read-write. So from
You are
a
acting as what? Your role as the admin, Kubernetes admin, or the service provider.
yeah, what I'm saying, if I want my workloads to bind, I would like different bindable objects.
Now let's try to play
You know what I
role
mean?
playing. In that case, let's if I try to ask you to be a role player, which role you're saying this your requirement?
Let's say I want read-only. I want to provide read-only access to a specific group, but I have
Yeah, that
credentials
means
for
you are
read.
the cluster admin, this Kubernetes cluster admin, right? Who is providing the service to the applications.
Yes.
Okay.
It could be the service provider that installs the service that has all this knowledge already, right? So it could be the
Yeah,
service provider that has the knowledge, or it could be an administrator that says, "Look, I wanna limit my access to the service." Could be the administrator too. I think it's either the service provider or the administrator. From the workload point of view, all he needs to know is like you have the right access to the secret that you are allowed to, with the role to the service, right? With a specific user and password that has a role for that service. And you're not supposed to go to this other one because I don't want you writing there. I want you do, for example, I want you to do your analytics, but I don't want you to change the data. Do your analytics, which is read only, right? So
yeah. So I think then provision service is going to fail in this scenario. Only the direct secret reference with the specific
we'll work around that,
credentials.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's only.
But I want to bring it
Okay.
up because I don't want people working
Yeah.
around the spec. I mean, people will work around the spec to meet the. I mean, it's not working around because the direct secret is in the spec, right? The direct secret
Yeah.
reference is in the spec, so you're not working around. You're solving the problem, but it discourages people from using the provision service, which is the right way to do it. You know what I mean? So we don't want to create a spec with that discourage people to do the right thing. Anyways, that's one. We have only 4
Anybody
minutes.
else has? Let's ask if anybody else has
Yeah.
want anything to add.
Any raised hands? I'm not looking at the raised hands. Nope. Okay. So the last thing is I think but you will also discussing internally, but the selector based binding gap. I think we have a gap.
Yeah.
Where if I do a selector binding, like you said, order doesn't matter. I could do a provision. I could do the service binding object ahead of time if I want to with a specific selector, and then the hope is that whenever multiple applications could have the same labels, right? Multiple workloads could come in with the same label, and then hoping that because the binding is there, it should happen, right? But you're saying that the first time it binds, it works, but then nothing else will be bindable, right?
Right. I mean, as per the spec, it is everything. The later, application coming up later also should bind.
Should also bind.
But yeah, supposed to bind. But our current implementation has the limitation, I guess, to not to do that. So.
Okay. So should we create?
We
So
need
I
to
think I'm
figure
gonna
out
create
what
a
is the
story.
solution. Yeah.
So let me create a story.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna create a story with that.
Yeah. So I remember the Scott mentioning something about using some kind of webhooks to to trigger the reconciliation as soon as
Yep.
something comes up. So that was the approach they taken. So we could go in that way, or otherwise going for watching resources, which might be again going to make more problematic things. Yeah. So, but
Right.
even if you're going for what do you call this webhook approach, still we can only do it for certain well-known resources like deployment, or deployment, whatever that those
Something like that.
deployment,
Yeah, the
yeah,
cron jobs, the job,
yeah, like that.
stateful set, something like
Yeah,
all
yeah.
those.
So
Yeah.
only for those things we can create some webhooks, and we notice that there is a special, I mean, whatever that matching label resource comes up, we need to trigger the reconciliation, something like that.
And the workload resource mapping is not gonna work on this, right? Is that what you're saying? The
Workload resource mapping, I don't know how that is going to.
because it's that's basically watching the world again. You know.
Yeah,
It can
yeah,
be-
that would be again more complex, I guess.
All right, we can discuss. We're out of time,
Yeah,
but
sure.
thank you very much. So the next moderator looks to be Fanny. So Fanny, be
Yep.
ready for that. And I think we're done. I give you back 1 minute. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.